Welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the limits of logic. We often talk about or hear in our culture, well, that's not logical, or be reasonable, or on and on about just the facts. And today we get to explore the possibilities of a more holistic view of the world that incorporates emotion rather than vilifying it. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, energizing all your cells and your molecules and your electrons, and creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation and the tickling, the tingling, and allow yourselves to become present right here, right now, in these remarkable physical forms that enable us to experience life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Friday again. It keeps happening. I guess that's a good thing, right? Anyway, today's topic is the limits of logic. And this topic came up for me because I had a conversation with a friend who may very well be listening, talking about the difference between and logical numeric kind of approach to a situation versus an emotional approach. So approaching an emotional conversation with facts and figures, that in itself can be a recipe for disaster, right? Because there's an emotional foundation to the conversation that isn't being addressed, or that's being addressed in a way that isn't resonating with those concerns. So it got me thinking about logic and rationality and emotion, and how in our culture emotionality is denigrated, really. Like being emotional, it's like stop being so emotional. That's an insult. It's an insult to call someone emotional. And I think that this points to a really, really important and entrenched rift in our contemporary culture, Western culture, where logic and reason are associated with masculinity, and emotionality is associated with femininity, and emotionality is denigrated and disrespected. You know, it's like if you get emotional, if you show your emotions, then that's showing weakness. And if we look a little bit more deeply into this issue, and by the way, I'm not seeing your comments. I don't know if you are commenting yet, but if you are, and I'm not responding, it's because I simply don't see your comments. But I'm checking on Facebook now to see if we're actually live. And the verdict is that, where are we? Yes, we're live. So hopefully I will be seeing your comments soon, if you post them, of course. So when we talk about logic is often something, well, numbers, right? The numbers don't lie. right? We've all heard the numbers don't lie, but I don't know that that's entirely true, because the numbers tell a partial truth. And I think that one of the things we get to look at is how in our culture we have taken a reductionist view of life itself and of the way that things work. We isolate a bacteria, and take it out of the context of a living system, or we look at blood outside of the context of a living system and make determinations about how things work. We look at something in nature that is a problem, in big air quotes here, and we eradicate that problem without seeing the bigger picture of how all these things are interacting with one another to make a greater holistic matrix. So good morning, Rosalind. Rosalind says, hello, logged off and back on. Maybe you can see the comments now. And I can. Thank you, Rosalind. I don't know why they weren't showing up before, but if anybody else is commenting from the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and I'm not responding, maybe if you close out and come back in, I'll be able to see the comments. Anyway, thank you for your commitment and resourcefulness, Rosalind. I appreciate it. So this is a massive topic right now. I mean, it's of massive significance right now because we are in the midst of a shifting paradigm that is requiring a radical change in worldview. And we are moving from this mechanistic model of machine parts that are interchangeable or dispensable, or this notion that everything is a machine, that works in a constant cycle, and that if there's something broken, we can just replace a part in the machine or eliminate a part, or like with our bodies, we look at our bodies and look at our medical model. Our medical model is treating symptoms, right? We're moving into a more holistic model, thankfully, but in many cases, our medical model says, oh, you've got a problem with your hip. Let's replace the hip, without necessarily looking at what other imbalances might be in your body that are feeding that imbalance in the hip, right? We're hopefully moving from this reductionist view of how things work to a more system type perception and awareness. And particularly, look at what we've done with nature. I mean, look at this is such a charged topic for me. I'm just going to let you in on that fact right now, because I'm seeing this disconnection of heart and head that has allowed us to make heinous decisions for humanity, for nature, for our whole world, for business. It's this logic of the numbers that allows us to make business decisions, or has in the past allowed us to make business decisions that are devastating for people and for life. If we look at these big corporations that are just looking to improve their bottom line, if that is the goal and that's the only important thing, then they can logically justify the pollution of the planet. They can logically justify all kinds of immoral behavior because they are working strictly from these patterns of the bottom line, right? And if we look at war, for instance, we can look at it as a numbers game. And if we look at it dispassionately, we can say, okay, it's okay to sacrifice this number of people and these number of bystanders and civilians. And it's all justified because it serves our objective end. And so what happens is that when we adhere to logic and rational thought, and I'm putting air quotes around rational because I think it's irrational to ignore our emotional intelligence and our emotional awareness and our emotional beingness, what we're doing when we move into those areas of cold, hard logic. Think about the words. What we're doing is we are excising our humanity from it. We are surgically removing our humanity. Our humanity is rooted in our emotional beingness as much as it's rooted in our intelligence. In fact, when we allow our emotional intelligence to guide and inform our decision-making process, our rational decision-making process, then we are approaching a more holistic, more grounded, more centered, more authentic, more ecological, not just in terms of nature, but in terms of our human ecology kind of decision-making. Because logic and decisions have ramifications that show up emotionally. So for instance, I'm sure that many of us are familiar with the potential partner that looks perfect on paper. And when it comes down to it, when we try to have human interaction, everything falls apart and there's no chemistry, or there's discord, or there's all kinds of upset despite this perfect paper match. And I think that this is something that happens, unfortunately. I think this happens when people are trying to build communities, you know, when we try to conceptualize an alternative community, or, you know, a holistic community kind of enterprise. What we do is we start creating rules, and those rules are based on logic, and they don't necessarily account for the actual alignment and agreement and participation of the people that are involved in these eco-villages, for example, or eco-based communities. You know, so what we're doing is we're trying to set up a structure, but not necessarily accounting for the humanity within that structure. I've often said that the problem with eco-villages or setting up communities is people. And, you know, that's because a lot of us, well, we're not as self-aware as we would like to be, and maybe don't have as rich an understanding of the interactions as we would like to be. And there are eco-villages and communities that have flourished, but unfortunately, I think they're more the exception than the rule. But anyway, and hopefully that's going to change as we gain more awareness of ourselves and our own emotional intelligence and our own emotional growth and responsibility. I think that it's as easy to err. Well, I don't know if it's as easy, but we can err on the emotional side as well as we can err on the rational side. But the thing that I see as something prevalent in our culture that has enabled us to get to the place that we are, where our very future is threatened on this planet as a species, is that we have kind of cut off the heart the head from the rest of the body. And so we hopefully, I'm hearing a lot more about emotional intelligence these days. Hopefully it is becoming more of a cultural value to be creating an integration of our wholeness. You know, that we are not mind-based, exclusively mind-based creatures. And again, I just want you guys to know I'm not seeing your comments. So that's why I'm not responding, in case you were feeling ignored. I hope you're not feeling ignored, but like I said, I'm not seeing comments, and I don't know why that might be. I'm just refreshing on Facebook to see if there's anything there that maybe I can respond to. Anyway, nope, just Rosalind's comments so far. So when we look at, now Dido, I can see you. Thank you. So I guess people aren't commenting this morning so much. I really appreciate you chiming in, Dido. Thank you. And I'm so delighted that you're here. And I know that you have comments on this topic, so I'm eager to hear what you have to say, because it's always a good contribution. And Rosalind, I invite you to add your comments in as well. Always good hearing from you. This is the battle of the century, maybe we can say, between what we might call, we could call it mind and spirit, we could call it head and heart. And I'm going to try to avoid the masculine feminine dichotomy here, because it can be very charged. And I guess now that I've said that, I need to make a distinction between there's toxic masculine and toxic feminine, there's divine masculine and divine feminine, and ultimately I would imagine that our trajectory, hopefully the healthy trajectory, goes to the expression of divine masculine and feminine together, and that there's a balance and a cycle and a wheel of support in life. And there, in that context, there is no separation of head and heart. We are a whole being, and the head can inform the heart, and the heart can inform the head. And in order to get to that place, because we're so practiced and so ready to default to the head, typically, what is necessary is to be tuning in more regularly and consistently with the heart and our emotional intelligence, our emotional awareness, our emotional knowing. Because from that place, we might make a decision that isn't adhering strictly to the cold calculations of logic, but that in the long run are going to create a better and more desirable outcome. Like that will open up a broader possibility, because it's taking the more holistic system into consideration. Logic can take us down a path that separates us further and further and further from our human experience and needs. So Dido says, I know in the past I made some decisions from my head only, and they did not go so well, even though they seemed logical. Exactly. When we look at things logically and not from our feeling awareness, our emotional awareness as well, we can make some pretty terrible decisions. So for example, we can take a job where it looks like it's going to be great. It looks like, it's the money we want, it's the hours we want, it looks like the working conditions are what we want. But when we went there and we experienced the interview and we experienced the people, maybe we had this terrible feeling like, not that I can't do this. Or maybe even a lesser extreme type feeling that is just this, there's something not right here. And then we take the job, and then we're kind of stuck in the job for however long and being miserable because we didn't pay attention to the knowledge that was available to us from that feeling intelligence. And what happens with the feeling intelligence is that it's considering a whole lot more than what is visible on a conscious level. Our emotional intelligence is tuning into a bigger picture, which we may or may not yet have in our conscious awareness, but there's a knowingness there that deserves our respect. And so Rosalind says, limits of logic. Core beliefs can be thought of as a series of filters, 100%. Logic can get distorted, overgeneralization, or based on personal experience. The assumption is that our emotions accurately reflect the way things actually are. The more loving side can guide our choices. So to your point, the assumption is that our emotions accurately reflect the way things actually are is not always the case, right? It is an assumption. And certainly if we're reactive, our emotions aren't going to necessarily reflect the truth. And what I'm talking about is not knee-jerk kinds of emotional reactions. What I'm talking about is the emotional awareness. So even if knee-jerk emotional reactions, if I go for that job and I get interviewed by two people, and one of them I really resonate with and the other one I really don't, and the one that I really don't resonate with is the one who is going to be making decisions about me and my welfare, then there's a red flag there that I need to pay attention to, even if on the surface it looks like everything is exactly what I wanted. It's the money, it's the place, it's the location, it's the work, all that makes sense. And yet there's something underneath that's eating away inside saying, I don't know, pay attention, pay attention. Good morning, Bernadette. Haven't seen you for a little bit. It's great to have you back with us. Welcome. So this is the same thing with people you meet. You know, someone you meet may, so I'm in a process right now of assembling a team of people to assist me in this NFT drop that I want to do with the Maggies that I've talked to you about. And by the way, if any of you know NFT developers or people who are really active in that space that might be able to assist me, I'm putting out a request for that kind of knowledge set and those kind of people. So anyway, in the process of doing this, I'm talking to different people, and I have the opportunity to encounter people that have exactly the right CV, right? And the references and the connections and perhaps the skills and talents, and yet the interpersonal communication is really, really challenged. And I'm like, you know, like I want all this stuff that's on the paper, but I don't know if I can handle the, you know, I don't know if this interpersonal communication friction is surmountable, or if I should just be paying attention to what's going on in my gut after these communications, right? So Rosalind says, how does one start to tell apart cognitive distortions in the real world? This is such a good question, Rosalind. That's a topic for a week's worth of conversations, because I don't know any direct answer to that, frankly. You know, my greatest question in life has always been what's real and what's not real, you know, because we do project our experience and our interpretation out into the world. So it's hard to know what's real and what's not real. And within our so this is actually a really good question, and I have a story to tell you about it. So one of my clients has been working through some issues and found themselves really triggered in a particular situation. So they with another person. So they started writing a letter, wrote a very, very long letter, did a video, you know, working through these thoughts. And as they were going through this process, they were having more and more awarenesses, and letters unsent, videos unsent, until they got to a point where they were able to communicate freely and cleanly what was going on. And they had the experience of this much greater clarity inside. It's kind of like when something goes thunk And yeah, that's the thing. I got it. I finally got the message. And so I think that there is an internal knowing, if we're willing to continue our exploration to the point where we get to that place of clarity. And it was interesting because she said along the way, she thought she was being authentic. She thought she was being honest. And then she evaluated that again and was able to go a level deeper and have a greater recognition of, well, wait a second, there's still some of this fuzziness going on here. There's still other stuff going on at play. So Bernadette says sometimes those feelings can also be fear of the unknown. Exactly. So we get to look more deeply. So Bernadette says expressions one hears can also dictate what the heart hears. Busy doing the Christmas stuff and timing was in my way. LOL. Well, you made it, and I'm so glad. And I hope you're having fun doing Christmas stuff. I'm sure a lot of us are doing that at this point. And hopefully you're enjoying it rather than it being a chore or a have to or a to do. Hopefully you're engaged in the process of it and celebrating the season with each moment of your engagement with it. So what we've been talking about is the separation of head and heart and coming to a more holistic experience. What might have to happen along the way to that holistic connection of head and heart, heart and head, is that we may need to err for a while on the knowledge and intelligence and wisdom of the heart. And I'm not talking about the reactive emotion. What I'm talking about is the emotional intelligence that we have available to us when we tune in and connect. And I believe that we can have a dialogue between head and heart, that when both parts are respected rather than one dominating the other, that we can come to more rich decisions. Like we can say, okay, well, on the surface, this looks perfect because all the boxes are checked, right? All the boxes are checked and it looks good. The thing is that when we say all the boxes are checked, oftentimes what we don't realize we're doing is that we've neglected to include some very important boxes. And one of those very important boxes is, how do I feel about that? How will I feel when this, that, or the other thing happens in that environment? What's the feeling tone of this experience? We often neglect to include that and defer to what we consider logical. And the thing is, at our fundamental core, we are not logical beings. We can do everything we want to try to pretend that we're logical, and we can follow the facts. And, when we say just the facts, that's a misleading concept in and of itself, because the facts have a multitude of interpretations, or the facts may be a very isolated view of something that is a much bigger picture, that were we to have that information about the bigger picture, the facts themselves or the interpretation of the facts would change radically. We all know how easy it is to manipulate statistics, for example. So Bernadette says, I tend to dismiss feeling when, for example, in an interview. You, Bernadette, are not alone in that. And that's why I use the interview example, because we're just looking at the facts, right? We're just looking at the opportunity. But part of the opportunity is the emotional environment that we're going to be living in. So Bernadette says, if I question at the moment, I'll add a timeline as to when I make the decision to stay or go. Wow. So in an interview, if I question at the moment, I'll add a timeline as to when I make the decision to stay or go. Well, I don't know that it's necessarily such a bad thing to add that timeline, but I don't, I think that we get to look at what is the emotion informing us about, and from there make choices that are reasoned and in alignment with our emotional state. Don't try and if you're, here's a recipe for misery, is to override your emotional awareness with logic and make a choice based on logic that is going to result in emotional pain, because then you've set yourself up for suffering, and we do it all the time. So Dido says, yes, I did know when I went for that perfect job that something was wrong in my gut. Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for that, Dido, because so many of us do that. And then we go into that perfect job and it's a horror show, right? And then we suffer for it, and then we beat ourselves up for making the wrong choice, and then we beat ourselves up because it's the perfect job and we don't feel like we can get out of it so easily. And this is how we end up in some really tight jams that aren't always easy to get ourselves out of. You know, like let's say you're talking about moving in with a partner, and on the surface it makes sense. We get to pay, we spend all our time together anyway. This way we can share rent, this way we can reduce expenses, blah blah blah, right? And then at the core of it, there's just a part of you saying, yeah but, yeah but, yeah but, and you don't know if that you justify in your mind that they, yeah but is because you're afraid of commitment or whatever. And then you override it and you get into the relationship and you're living together and it's a horror show. So why? Because we overrode that gut knowing. We do that with people that we meet, with relationships we create, with jobs we take, with projects we embark on. When you have a bad feeling about it from the start, go the other way. I don't care how attractive it is. I can speak about this passionately because I've made that decision to go ahead with the thing and tortured myself for forever with it. While I was enmeshed in it and couldn't get out, certain things, making commitments and then needing to fulfill the commitments, and the pathway there is just misery rather than trusting my gut, because it looked so appealing. It looked so appealing on paper, and, just the possibility. Not to say that there hasn't been benefit that was generated, not to say that there wasn't learning as a result or an accomplishment or whatever, but the misery, is it worth it? Is it worth it when we know better from the outset? And so our knowing better isn't just the rational knowing, isn't just the knowing through logic. The knowing is through our actual experience. Bernadette says, if it's an in my face feeling, I'll turn the position down. Good, Bernadette. That's awesome. Sometimes the fear of the unknown because of being different. I need to at times wait a moment to know for sure. And I think that that's such good counsel, Bernadette, that maybe we get to marinate on these things. We get to consider them and contemplate them and not necessarily rush into something. And we get to look at what's going on with our emotions. Oftentimes we use our logic to override the emotions and to say, oh, well, that's just my fear of the unknown. Well, what we get to do is to go deeper and deeper until we get clarity, because maybe it is your fear of the unknown, and maybe you get into that situation and your fears of the unknown are overridden and it is a good situation. Or maybe you override your fear, whatever it is, or your discomfort, and you get into that situation and your gut is justified, right? So there's no perfect formula for knowing. And I think our gut is really, really smart. So we've been talking about our heart, but I think it's our gut too. And you can say something feels off. It doesn't make any sense. I don't see any reason for it on the surface, but something feels off. And my inclination, because of my experiences over the years and being aware of the strength of my mind to override my gut and my heart, over the years, I have learned that no matter what the intelligence says, I need to listen to my gut. And that may or may not be the case for you, but that's what I've learned. And I find that my life is a whole lot less painful. And there's a whole lot less suffering and a whole lot less drama as a result. So yeah, that's it for today. So Bernadette says, I just keep adding to my resume. That's funny, Bernadette. That's awesome. And it sounds like you're getting all kinds of experiences that'll feed into your future and into a purer expression of who and what you are. Bernadette says, knowledge is knowing, and believe me, I have learned many. Yes, so we gain a lot of knowledge through experience, that we just need to be alert to the kinds of lessons we choose to learn from our situation and circumstance. So that's it for today and for this week. Another amazing week with you guys. I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Always, I am so grateful to you for the opportunity to have these conversations and to think more deeply about so many things together. And I just so deeply appreciate you. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out all the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network. And in the meantime, I'm just so grateful and so appreciative of you and sending so much love. Hope to see you again here sometime soon, like maybe next week.